Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Matthews. This is one of my basic videos on the importance of watching movies critically. In other videos, I've talked about cuts, camera angles, and visual elements of movies. But just as important, and maybe it's sometimes even more important, is sound. Music, sound effects, voiceover actors, all of these are crucial to so many movies, especially animated movies, but basically any movie ever made. Sound tends to be overlooked in movie criticism because it's easier to discuss visuals. It's in fact easier to show visuals. You have to experience sound in real time, and that takes time, whereas visuals you can just look at almost instantly. And so when I teach an intro to film class, I get a textbook, it has lots of visuals in it, but guess what it doesn't have? Sound! That's why I think a video like this and videos on YouTube are better sort of textbook material for classes on film and movie watching and movie criticism. They can not only show visuals, they can play sound for you. Now, I want to correct an error I sometimes hear about movies. There's no such thing as a silent movie. I mean, since the beginning of movies, well, nearly the beginning, sound has been part of movies. Now, it's true that movies were only visual for a while until, yes, Al Jolson made All That Jazz with a soundtrack that was part of the movie reel. So the sound barrier was broken in the late 1920s. And before that, you just had movies that were purely visual. However, when people were watching movies in movie theaters in the 19-teens and 20s, they were hearing sound. There was a soundtrack, but it was a locally produced soundtrack, usually on an organ or a piano, sometimes on a violin, sometimes with other instruments. Basically, all movies ever made, including the so-called silent movies, had sound with them, particularly music. And so, really, movies are about two senses that we experience as humans. One is visual, and one is auditory. Now, in so many movies, the musical score matters tremendously. The musical score is even kind of a character commenting on the visual elements of a movie. You can have John Williams, who is bombastic and has lots of color and emotion in his music, which is a kind of character. It's almost as if John Williams gets to comment on every movie that he scores for. Bernard Herrmann, who scored a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies, on the other hand, is eerie and mysterious, and he draws out a lot of ambiguity in the visual elements of the movie to create even more tension and more ambiguity with his musical scores. That's why I think composers are one of the most important parts, if not one of the top 2 or 3 parts, of creating a movie. They can make you feel certain things in scenes with their music. If you put Bernard Herrmann as the composer of Star Wars would be completely different from what it is with John Williams as the composer. I encourage you to watch a good documentary called Score, S-C-O-R-E, which shows you how music is composed for movies and goes through the film history of some of the great composers in movie history. And so you get to see behind the scenes how they create the music, as well as get to know more of the history about who is important, which composers you ought to know. Now, also with music are the sound effects, and there's a lot of great sound effects. In fact, for most horror movies, science fiction movies, the sound effects even make the movie. To bring up Star Wars again, Star Wars is nothing without the fabulous sound effects of one of the greatest sound effects persons of all, Ben Burtt. Ben Burtt's also part of the movie WALL-E, and he makes the soundscape in WALL-E really amazing.
Weisung, Mary, Aimuwanka, Directive, Directive.
Ta-da! What's Star Wars without the blasters and Darth Vader's respiratory breathing and the lightsabers and R2-D2's beeps? All those sound effects matter so much when they give those movies the character that they have. I'm going to play for you a scene from the movie Crimson Peak. I'm going to leave it at DVD quality so that you can focus more on the sound and listening than the visual elements. It would be great if you put your headphones on, but you definitely need to turn up your speakers to listen to this. Now I challenge you to record every sound you hear in this short, say 2-minute clip. By the end of this clip, you need to have a really long list, otherwise you haven't even come close to the amount of sounds that you can hear in it. Oh, and by the way, this clip is a little creepy for the little people out there, so beware that this is a horror movie. Did you catch all that from the clip? There are dozens of sounds in this particular clip. And of course, the pauses and even the quiet spaces help create the dynamics of the scene. When you have sound and then when you have silence, silence is just an effective sound, as it were, than sound itself. I'm going to show you a list of every sound in this clip that one of my students made. Here it is. It's hard to believe that there are this many sounds, but there they are. The student who put this together listened carefully. I even think she missed a few. But just in 2 minutes, this is how important sound design is to movies. Now, in this list, you see 2 different categories, and this is something I want to bring up for you. There's a kind of sound that's part of the movie world that the characters or the things in the frame could hear. And then there's a sound that is not part of the movie world that only you, the movie watcher, can hear. These 2 kinds of sounds, these 2 levels, are called diegetic and non-diegetic. I bring up these terms only to give you a couple technical terms to play with. Diegetic sounds are sounds within the world of the movie. Whether it's sound effects, music, or dialogue, it's coming from within the movie world, and the movie should do a good enough job of signaling to you that it is coming from within the movie world. Whereas there are non-diegetic sounds like musical scores, for example, or voiceover narrators that are laid on top of a movie that nobody can hear in the movie world, only the movie viewers can hear them.
Okay, get yourself ready for some reading. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Who? No, I said that. Batman is very wise.
In the Crimson Peak clip, there's even a couple sounds that sort of break the barrier between diegetic and non-diegetic. That is, it's ambiguous as to whether they're coming from within the movie world or laid on top of it. One of them is the heavy breathing that you hear at the very beginning of the clip. Was that a voiceover narrator, or was it coming from within the world of the movie where the characters could hear it? Well, you could go either way with that, I think. So clever movie makers, even movie makers trying to make something really complex or ambiguous, will know how to challenge our notion of what's coming from the movie world and what's laid on top of it. There's a great opportunity for those of you who write music to write scores for silent films. This can be, in a way, you trying your hand at creating music for a movie. So to me, if you want to be a movie critic, even a good movie watcher, you need to listen as much as you see. And let me put a challenge out for all movie critics. You need to write more about sound. I see so much on the visual elements of a movie, and I myself am guilty of analyzing too much visual elements at the expense of the aural, A-U-R-A-L, elements in movie. Let's listen more and maybe comment more on what we're hearing. This is an angle to film criticism that some of you could pick up and run with, because people might actually be interested in the sounds of movies versus the visual elements of movies. So please subscribe to my video and please like it. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Go watch my other Understanding Movies and Shot for Shot series. I'd really appreciate any comment you leave me too on what you heard in this video that I missed. Have a great day.